Why does your brain completely shut down at the exact moment a $5,000 pot is on the table? Why do you make the call you swore you would never make again every single time the pressure peaks? And why is it that the same player who crushes hand history reviews and studies GTO for hours can sit down at a real table and play like a complete amateur the second emotions enter the picture? The answer is not what you think. It has nothing to do with skill, knowledge, or experience. It has everything to do with a hidden process happening inside your brain in the 400 milliseconds before you act. A process that neuroscientists at Stanford and UCLA have spent the last decade decoding. And what they found is going to change how you play poker forever. A landmark study published in the Journal of Neuroscience tracked the brain activity of high-stakes players under simulated pressure. The result was brutal. Under emotional load, blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, dropped by up to 30%. At the same time, the amygdala, your emotional alarm system, fired 4 times faster than normal. In plain English, your decision-making brain literally goes offline at the exact moment you need it the most. This is why intelligent players go broke. This is why your tilt feels uncontrollable. This is why no amount of solver work or hand review will save you when the pressure is real. The problem is not strategic. The problem is neurological. And the solution is not more studying. The solution is a complete rebuild of your mental operating system. In the next 21 minutes, I am going to give you exactly that. A precision mental framework built from neuroscience research and battle-tested by elite professionals. 7 pillars. Each one targets a specific brain mechanism that is silently draining your bankroll right now. By the end of this video, you will have the exact system that the top 1% of poker players use to stay ice cold under any pressure. And at minute 18, I am going to give you the bonus that I personally use to stop tilt cold in the 30 seconds before it destroys a session. I call it the Tilt Killer Protocol. The same 5-step emergency system that took me from spewing buy-ins to playing 6-figure volume without a single moment of emotional leakage. Save it. Take notes. Apply it tonight. Because what most players will never understand from this video is that mental game is not a soft skill. It is hard science. And the players who master the science are the same players who quietly print money while everyone else blames variance. Let me show you what is really happening inside your head when you sit at that table. Before we go into the 7 pillars, I need you to understand something that almost no poker coach in the world will ever tell you. Because if they told you this, they would have to admit that 90% of the strategy content they sell does not work for the players who need it most. The reason your mental game keeps collapsing is not a willpower problem. It is not a focus problem. It is not even an emotional control problem in the traditional sense. The real problem is that you are operating with an identity that was never designed to win. Read that again. Every single decision you make at the poker table flows from who you believe you are. If you believe you are a grinder, someone who grinds for results, who measures success by winnings, who defines themselves by their session outcome, then your brain is hardwired to react emotionally to every single variance event. Because every bad beat is not just a bad beat to your subconscious, it is a direct threat to your identity. Every downswing is not just a statistical fluctuation, it is evidence that you are failing as a person. This is documented neuroscience. Researcher Claude Steele at Stanford spent 20 years studying what he called identity threat. He found that when your sense of self is challenged, your cortisol levels spike within seconds. Your working memory drops by up to 40%. Your decision-making becomes reactive. And critically, your brain will do anything in its power to protect your identity even at the cost of bad outcomes. That is why tilt feels so personal. That is why bad runs shake you to the core. That is why you make decisions after a cooler that you would never make in a calm state. Your brain is not making a poker decision. It is defending your identity from collapse. And until you fix the identity, no strategy improvement will ever hold under real pressure. I spent years thinking I had a strategy gap. I studied harder. I analyzed more hands. I improved my technical game. And then I sat down at a real session with real money on the line, and I completely fell apart. Not because I did not know what to do, but because the version of me sitting at that table could not handle the emotional weight of the moment. That was the turning point. I stopped trying to fix my strategy and started rebuilding my mental operating system from the ground up. The result was transformative. And that is exactly what these 7 pillars are designed to do for you. They do not patch your mental game. They rebuild it entirely. The first pillar is the foundation that everything else rests on. And if you get this one right, the next 6 become 5 times easier to implement. So let me show you exactly how to perform the identity shift that separates winners from broke players. Pillar 1 is the identity shift, and it is the single most important neurological intervention you will ever make in your poker career. Here is the core principle. You are not a grinder. You are a decision-making machine. Read that one more time. You are not defined by your results. You are not defined by your win rate, your bankroll size, your stack at the end of the night, or whether you ran good or ran bad. You are defined exclusively by the quality of your decisions. The moment you internalize this shift, everything changes at the neurological level. Your amygdala stops treating variance as a personal threat. Your brain stops releasing cortisol every time you take a bad beat. You stop associating a losing session with personal failure, because a machine does not feel threatened by a bad outcome. A machine evaluates inputs, processes information, and produces the best possible output given the available data. That is all poker is. Inputs, decisions, outputs. The variance handles itself over volume. Your job is the decision, not the result. Now I know what you are thinking. That sounds simple in theory, but try feeling that way when you just got stacked for the 3rd time in an hour by a fish who called you down with bottom pair. I hear you. This is not about pretending you have no emotions. The neuroscience is clear. You cannot stop the emotional response from firing. The amygdala is faster than the prefrontal cortex by a factor of about 8 to 1. What you can do is change what your identity is attached to. And when your identity is attached to your decisions instead of your outcomes, the emotional response loses its grip on your behavior. Here is the exact exercise I want you to install starting today. Every single time before you sit down to play live or online, you say this sentence out loud or in your head. Today, I am not here to win money. I am here to make the best possible decision on every single hand. That is my only job. That is my only measure of success. Do this consistently for 30 days, and you will rewire your relationship with variance at a neural level. There is published research from UCLA showing that pre-performance identity statements measurably reduce stress hormones and improve executive function under pressure. This is the exact mechanism elite poker professionals use without knowing the science behind it. They protect the decision. They release the outcome. That is the foundation. With that locked in, we can now move to the pillar that controls when you should never sit down at the table in the first place. Pillar 2 is emotional accounting, and this one will fundamentally change how you understand tilt at its source. Most players think tilt starts when something bad happens at the table. A cooler, a suck-out, a bad read that costs a huge pot. But that is almost never true. By the time something bad happens and you tilt, the tilt was already building for hours or even days. Think about the last time you really tilted. Not a mild frustration, a real meltdown. Where were you mentally before you even sat down? Were you tired? Were you stressed about money? Did you fight with someone? Were you already running bad and carrying the emotional weight of your last 3 sessions? That accumulated emotional pressure is what I call emotional debt. And just like financial debt, it accumulates with interest. You do not notice it building. It sits just below the surface. Then one bad beat at the table acts as the trigger that releases everything you were already carrying. The bad beat did not cause the tilt. It just unlocked it. This is why 2 different players can take the exact same bad beat in the exact same hand for the exact same amount of money and have completely different reactions. One player shrugs it off and moves on. The other goes off the rails for the rest of the session. The difference is not personality. The difference is how much emotional debt each player was carrying when they sat down. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky at Stanford has published extensively on this exact phenomenon. He calls it allostatic load, the cumulative wear of chronic stress on the body and brain. Under high allostatic load, your nervous system reacts to small triggers as if they were life-threatening events. That is exactly what is happening when a normal bad beat sends you into a full tilt spiral. So here is the system I call emotional accounting. Before every single session, you rate your current emotional state on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is completely calm, rested, focused, and mentally fresh. 1 is emotionally depleted, stressed, anxious, or carrying baggage from prior events. If your number is 7 or above, you are cleared to play. If your number is below 7, you have two options. Option 1 is to do a deliberate reset before you sit down. Breathing exercises, a walk, a clear mental transition ritual until you bring yourself back to a 7 or higher. Option 2 is to simply not play that session. I know that sounds extreme, but the math is brutal. The sessions where you are below a 7 emotionally are the exact sessions where your biggest leaks happen. Those are the sessions that undo weeks of disciplined winning. Protecting those sessions from yourself is worth more than any upside of playing through emotional debt. Track this in a simple notebook for 30 days, and you will see a pattern emerge that will save you thousands of dollars over your career. Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 are the foundation. Now we move into the protocols. The exact in-game tools that elite professionals use to stay neurologically locked in during the highest pressure moments of a session. Pillar 3 is the pre-decision ritual, and this is one of the most immediately practical tools in this entire framework. You can install this today and feel the difference in your next session. Here is the problem it solves. Under pressure, your prefrontal cortex gets partially hijacked by your amygdala. When you are stressed, when the pot is big, when a player stares you down, when you are running bad, and this is yet another critical spot. Your amygdala fires first, and it fires fast. The result is that you make decisions from an emotional state rather than a rational one. You know this feeling. Your heart rate climbs. You feel slightly rushed. You decide faster than you should. Or you freeze and overthink from anxiety rather than from clarity. Either way, the quality of your decision drops significantly. The pre-decision ritual is a 17-second protocol that interrupts the amygdala response and re-engages your prefrontal cortex before you act. It works like this. The moment you recognize you are in a significant decision spot, a big bet, a large all-in, a spot where you feel any emotional pressure at all, you do not act immediately. You pause. First, you take one slow, deep breath in for 4 seconds. Second, you hold it for 4 seconds. Third, you exhale slowly for 4 seconds. Fourth, you internally say the phrase, "I see clearly, I decide calmly." Fifth, only now do you make your decision. The entire process takes 17 seconds, and in those 17 seconds, your nervous system shifts from a stress response back toward baseline. Your heart rate drops slightly, your vagal tone increases, your prefrontal cortex reactivates, and you make the decision from a place of clarity rather than reaction. This is the same neurological technique Navy SEALs use before combat decisions, and surgeons use before high-risk operations. It works because of a documented physiological mechanism called the parasympathetic reset. Slow, controlled exhalation directly activates the vagus nerve, which downregulates the stress response within seconds. Practice this in low-stakes spots first until it becomes automatic. Then use it in every significant decision regardless of stakes. Now listen carefully, because I have to be honest about something. What I have shared with you in these 3 pillars is real. It works. And most players will see immediate improvement just from applying what you already have. But there is a hard truth. These 3 pillars are roughly 10% of the full mental operating system. The other 90%. The specific protocols for every type of tilt. The neurological scripts for rebuilding identity after a major downswing. The exact mental playbook for tournaments versus cash games. The bankroll psychology protocols. The opponent profiling system. All of that is detailed inside the Mind of a Grinder collection. It is the complete operational manual for every mental and strategic situation you will ever face at the table. The link is in the pinned comment below. If you are serious about your career, the investment pays for itself in the first session you save from collapse. Now let me show you why most players completely misunderstand variance, and why fixing that misunderstanding is worth more than any solver subscription you will ever pay for. Pillar 4 is reframing variance as data. This is the pillar that will fundamentally rewrite your relationship with downswings, bad beats, and losing sessions. Most players treat variance as the enemy, something unfair that happens to them, a hostile force that punishes their good play and rewards their opponent's bad play. And because they treat variance as the enemy, every variance event triggers an emotional reaction: frustration, anger, self-doubt, confusion. That emotional reaction then corrupts the next decision and the one after that, creating a spiral that turns a normal statistical fluctuation into a catastrophic session. Here is the reframe that changes everything at the neural level. Variance is not the enemy. Variance is data. Every time you take a bad beat, you are receiving information. You are learning how your opponents play. You are receiving confirmation that you were the mathematical favorite, which means you made the correct decision. You are building sample size that will eventually pay you back with interest. When you lose a big hand as an 80% favorite, the correct mental response is not, "Why does this always happen to me?" The correct response is, "I made a plus EV decision. I will be rewarded for that decision over volume. The result of this individual hand is irrelevant to the quality of my thinking." The practical exercise is simple. Every time something bad happens at the table, instead of reacting emotionally, ask yourself one question. What would a robot do right now? A robot would process the information, note the data, update its model of the opponent, and move to the next hand with zero emotional residue. That is your goal. Not to be emotionless, but to process and move forward. Pillar 5 is strategic silence and table presence. This pillar takes your mental game and turns it into a competitive weapon at the table. Research by Paul Ekman, the leading expert on micro-expressions, found that humans broadcast their emotional state through over 40 different facial muscles within the first 200 milliseconds of an emotional event. That means before you even consciously feel an emotion, your face has already leaked it, and opponents who pay attention are absorbing that data whether they realize it or not. Most players at a poker table are broadcasting their emotional state constantly. When they are frustrated, they show it. When they hit a big hand, they show it. When they are nervous, they show it. Every emotional leak is information your opponents can use against you. Strategic silence means you actively choose to reveal nothing. Not just physically, neurologically, you cultivate what I call void state, a condition of complete internal stillness that projects outward as unreadable, controlled, and quietly intimidating presence. Against aggressive players, this is devastating. When they cannot read your emotional state, they cannot calibrate their aggression correctly. They are flying blind, and you have a significant psychological edge before a single card is dealt. The void state is trained through breathwork, neutral facial baseline, and a specific cognitive technique called observer mode, where you place your attention slightly outside your body and observe the table as if you were watching it from above. It sounds strange. It works, and the top professionals use a version of it, whether they call it that or not. Now we move into the protocol that locks in your mental gains permanently after every single session. Pillar 6 is the post-session debrief protocol, and this is where most poker players leave the most mental game improvement on the table. Almost every player reviews their hands after a session. They look at their decisions, their lines, their frequencies, but almost nobody reviews their mental game with the same level of rigor. And because they do not, they repeat the same mental leak session after session, year after year. The post-session debrief is a 7-question protocol that you complete within 30 minutes of finishing every single session. Not the next day, not when you feel like it, within 30 minutes, while the session is still fresh and your emotional memory of each moment is still accessible. There is published research from Northwestern showing that emotional memories consolidate within the first 2 hours after an event. Reviewing within that window prevents distortion and creates accurate self-correction data. Here are the 7 questions. Question 1. What was my biggest leak in this session, technical or mental? Be specific, not just I tilted. Identify the exact moment, the exact trigger, and the exact decision it led to. Question 2. When did I feel tilt starting to rise? What was the specific trigger? The hand, the player, the situation. Question 3. Did I break my identity rule today? Was I playing for results instead of decisions? If yes, when exactly did the shift happen? Question 4. What is one decision I am genuinely proud of from this session? Find it. Every session has at least one moment where you handled something well. Acknowledge it. This is not optional. Anchoring positive moments rewires your brain toward recognizing good play. Question 5. What is one decision I would make differently with a clear head? Specific. The hand. The street. The action. Question 6. What is one concrete adjustment I will make before my next session based on what I observed today? One thing. Not a list. One actionable adjustment. Question 7. What is my emotional state right now rated from 1 to 10? And if it is below 7, what do I need to do before the next session to recover? This protocol does 2 things at the neural level. First, it accelerates your mental game improvement dramatically because you are actively processing and learning from every session rather than just moving on. Second, it prevents emotional carryover by giving you a structured way to close out the session mentally. You debrief. You close the loop. You release the emotional weight of what happened so it does not become emotional debt that you carry into the next session. Do this protocol after every single session for 60 days and your tilt frequency will drop by an order of magnitude. This is documented in the data of every player who has implemented it consistently. Now we get to the pillar that separates players who can perform for 2 hours from players who can perform for 10. Pillar 7 is building mental endurance, and this is the pillar that separates professional level players from amateurs who get tired after 3 hours. The reality of poker is that the money is almost always made in the later stages of a session or a tournament. The field has thinned. The stacks are deeper relative to the antes. The pressure is at its highest. The decisions are most consequential. And that is exactly when mental fatigue sets in and destroys the weaker player's game. The player who wins is rarely the most technically skilled in the room. The player who wins is the one who can think clearly the longest. Mental endurance is a trainable skill, and the way you train it is through a method I call deliberate discomfort. Deliberate discomfort means intentionally placing yourself in cognitively and emotionally demanding situations outside of poker so that your overall mental capacity expands. There are 3 domains where this training happens. First, physical discomfort training, cold showers, intense physical exercise, endurance activities, anything that trains your body and brain to stay functional under stress. The science here is clear. Cold exposure has been shown in published research from the University of Tromsø to increase norepinephrine by up to 500%. That is the exact neurotransmitter responsible for focus and decision quality under pressure. Train it deliberately. Second, deep focus training. Spend 45 minutes every single day on one cognitively demanding task with 0 distractions. Solver work, reading dense material, game theory study, anything that requires sustained mental effort. Build the attention muscle deliberately. This is what neuroscientists call directed attention training, and it has been shown to physically thicken the prefrontal cortex over time. Third, emotional exposure training. Deliberately put yourself in situations that create mild emotional discomfort and practice staying regulated. Conversations you would normally avoid. Situations that create mild anxiety. Competitive environments outside of poker. The goal is to expand your window of tolerance, the range of emotional intensity within which you can still think clearly. Most players have a very narrow window. Small pressure equals fine. Medium pressure equals some tilt. High pressure equals complete breakdown. Elite players have an extremely wide window. They absorb enormous emotional load and still produce optimal decisions. That width is built deliberately over time through consistent practice outside the table. Implement these 3 training domains for 90 days and you will outendure 99% of the players you sit across from. Now I want to deliver the bonus I promised at the start of the video. The exact 5-step protocol I personally use to stop tilt in the 30 seconds before it destroys a session. This is the Tilt Killer Protocol. The exact 5-step emergency system for stopping tilt in the exact moment it begins to take hold. Not preventing tilt in theory. Not managing it after it has already destroyed you. Stopping it cold in the precise 30 to 60 second window after a triggering event when tilt is starting to take over. But you are still at the table, still making decisions. That window is the most dangerous moment in any session. That is when the spiral begins. The Tilt Killer is designed specifically for that window. Step 1. Stop immediately. The moment you feel the tilt response starting. Elevated heart rate. Hot face, rushed thinking, the urge to shove chips without fully thinking. You stop all action. You do not make another decision until you complete the protocol. If it is a live game and it is not your turn, perfect. Use the time. If it is your turn, take the full time allowed. Step 2. Physical reset. Stand up if possible. If not, shift your posture, plant both feet flat on the floor, and roll your shoulders back. Take 10 slow, controlled breaths, not performative, not rushed. Slow, deliberate, full breaths that actually change your nervous system state. This is not optional. The physical reset is the physiological foundation for everything that follows. Step 3. The robot question. Ask yourself clearly and without judgment. Would a rational, emotionless decision maker make this next action right now? Not would a good player make it. A robot. Zero emotional influence. If the answer is yes, proceed. If the answer is no, see Step 4. Step 4. Exit the hand or the session. If the tilt response is strong enough that you cannot honestly answer the robot question with a clean yes, you must exit. Leave the hand, fold, or if the session as a whole has been compromised, leave the session entirely. This is not weakness. This is discipline. The players who win long-term are the ones who protect their peak mental state with the same ferocity they protect their bankroll. Step 5. Log the trigger. Before your next session, write down exactly what triggered the tilt. The specific hand, the specific opponent, the specific situation. Not to dwell on it, to understand the pattern. Over time, you will notice that most of your tilt comes from the same 2 or 3 recurring triggers. Once you know your triggers, you can build specific preemptive protocols around them. This is how you turn reactive tilt management into proactive immunity. Memorize this protocol. Save this video. Apply it tonight. Because here is the truth. Every player will face the moment where this protocol decides whether they keep their stack or burn the entire session. The players who have the protocol installed survive. The players who do not lose everything they built. That is the difference between professionals and everyone else. Now there is one final thing I have to tell you before this video ends, and it might be the most important thing I will say in the entire 21 minutes. Let me bring everything together. You now have the complete framework that the top 1% of poker players use to stay unbreakable at the table. Pillar 1. Identity shift. You are not a grinder chasing results. You are a decision-making machine. Your identity is attached to your process, not your outcomes. Pillar 2. Emotional accounting. You track your emotional state before every session. You never sit down below a 7. You treat emotional debt with the same seriousness as financial risk. Pillar 3. The pre-decision ritual. You use the 17-second breathing reset to re-engage your prefrontal cortex before every significant decision. Pillar 4. Reframing variance as data. You stop treating bad beats as enemies. You treat them as information. You ask what a robot would do, and you move on with zero emotional residue. Pillar 5. Strategic silence and void state. You cultivate complete internal stillness as a weapon. You give away nothing. Pillar 6. The post-session debrief. You answer the 7 questions within 30 minutes of every session. You close the emotional loop. You extract the learning. You release the weight. Pillar 7. Building mental endurance. You train deliberate discomfort daily. You expand your window of tolerance. And on top of that, you now have the Tilt Killer Protocol, your 5-step emergency system for stopping tilt cold in the exact moment it begins. This is a complete operational system. And like every system, the results depend entirely on your consistency in applying it. Now, I have to be completely honest with you about something. What I have given you in this video is real. It works. But it is the framework, the skeleton, the actual deep integration, the detailed protocols for every type of player, every type of tilt, every type of pressure situation, the full neurological scripts, the specific mental game playbook for tournaments versus cash games, the bankroll psychology system, the opponent profiling protocols. All of that is inside the Mind of a Grinder collection, and I am going to be direct with you because I respect your time. This is not for everybody. If you play casually, if you do not take your results seriously, if you are not willing to do the inner work, that strategy alone will never solve. Do not buy it. It will sit unused on your hard drive and waste your money. But if you are serious, if you treat poker as a craft, if you understand that your mental game is the last frontier between you and the next level, then this is the exact system you need. There are 2 options. Collection 1 contains the 10 core ebooks at $29.90. That is the technical foundation. Then there is Collection 2. This is the one I personally recommend for serious players. It contains the 10 core ebooks, plus 5 premium bonus volumes, including the complete mental game integration manual, the advanced tilt protocols, and the high-pressure decision system. Collection 2 is $29.89. The full link to both is in the pinned comment below. 3 final things before you go. First, comment below and tell me which of the 7 pillars hit you the hardest. I read every comment personally, and I respond to as many as I can. Your answer also helps other players find the insight that resonates with their situation. Second, subscribe and hit the bell notification. The next video drops in 3 days, and it is on how to read souls at the table. The neuroscience of decoding your opponents in real time. You do not want to miss that one. Third, share this video with one player who needs to see it. One player whose mental game is silently destroying their career. You might save them years of pain. The information is in front of you. The system is complete. The science is real. The only variable now is you. Go be unbreakable.